Hello, YouTube peeps. This is Tracy here, your friendly neighborhood paper pusher, and this would be my first time ever going live on YouTube. So I would love it if somebody would send a comment so I can make sure it's working. Here's going to be the fun part. YouTube is showing, and it is not synced up. And I forgot to mute my every time. So let's see if I can get this to go in. Oh, there we go. All right, we got them all synced up now. Sorry, I should have started this earlier, but I have so much stuff to show you on said fancy tool that it was taking me a lot longer than I thought. That and oh my goodness, construction. Don't even get me started. So I will likely come back and edit the beginning of this video so it becomes just Technique Tuesday and not Tracy rambling, but you know, Technique Tuesday with a bonus. So this is the underside of the Stamparatus, which seems like an odd place to start. But I'm going to start here just because I want to show you that this is where the magnets live. And this machine comes with 2 magnets. Now these magnets are very strong and they have these separate houses way far apart from each other for a reason. Because if the magnets get too close together and they are, like I said, super strong, they will snap. And sometimes when they snap, they will snap violently. And this is how hard they are. Like, it's all I can do to try to line these 2 edges up. But if the 2 magnets get too close together, they will snap together and they will break, and sometimes sharp, and sometimes little bits and pieces. Now you can buy replacement magnets. I have not yet. This recently happened, so I haven't bought them yet. But you can buy replacement magnets. In the meantime, though, they still work like this. But that's the trick. Keep your magnets as far apart as possible. So here we go. This is, it's really hard to see with that in there. This is the Stamparatus. When it first came out, some of the demonstrators who had been demonstrators longer than me were so excited, so incredibly excited about this. It is, I guess if you don't want, Stampin' Up! Calls it a Stamparatus. If you want to know a generic term, it is a stamp positioning tool. And there was a different company who had a different brand of something, which the name is escaping me at the moment, before. And when people found out that this was coming out, they were so excited. And I was like, okay. Because I'm more of a, you line it up, put your hand down, hope for the best, and away we go stamping. So I thought, well, I don't need a stamp positioning tool. But as it turns out, oh my goodness, yes, you do. Live. Oh. So that's what happens when you get live. Your son asks you a question in the middle of it. So it also, when it first came out, some of the demonstrators had started calling this a Stampasaurus, which is such a cute name. And I envision a dinosaur that will like stamp perfectly for you. So, but in a way, Stampasaurus is almost a better name for it. Because what I have for you is 10 stamping reasons why this thing is just like one of the greatest tools ever. And one other reason that is, you know, it works for a family member of mine. Maybe it works for somebody you know. There's so much you can do with this thing. So what I'm going to show you is what it comes with. And then I am going to show you 10 techniques, sort of. I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff as I go. I'm not going to complete the entire card. And I haven't even completed entire cards. I will complete those and post those later in the week. But what I'm going to show you is the basics of what you can get to do. And then there's a lot of, and this is the fun of, if you ask me, anything stamping, then you just play with it. So I'm also a demonstrator. So part of my job in life is to help you. So I'm going to give you enough to make you decide that you want this. No, I'm going to give you enough to make you, or so you have like a good idea whether or not this is something that you could use. And then if you do use it, come back, watch this again, and it should give you hopefully enough to get you started. And then there is a lot of playing. But if not, let me know, because I'm happy to Zoom and play with you. We can do all sorts of different techniques and try them. And you'll notice as I go through some of my samples and what I show you, you will notice that there was a lot of trial and error on my side, and I've done this before. So this is a Stamparatus. Now, because I was getting all these things ready, I have all sorts of things set up here to make this quicker and as painless as possible for you. So what you get when you get the Stamparatus is the 2 magnets on the back. This is all one piece, right? This brown and white, it's all one piece. You get 2 of these plates, and they do fit. This one is for something a little bit later. They do fit. You can have them both in at the same time. What you cannot do is close both of them at the same time. You will only get this far. I'm going to try to do this without knocking everything over. If you try to force this anymore, you're just going to break it. You're going to break the hinge or break a plate or break something else. When Stamparatus first came out, you could actually buy extra plates for it, but it must not, you can do a lot with just 2 plates. So it must not have been a popular choice because they stopped selling the spares. Now, as it turns out, I bought an extra pair. So I actually have 4 to go with mine. But when I store mine, I just take this off the hinge and I put it in here. And then when I close it, I can still close it. But do not try to close both of them with them both in the hinge. Now I just stuck my things together. So as you may have noticed, it was that easy to, you just put these things straight up and down and they clip in and they flip. Now I think it is really just personal preference, whether you prefer to, I just love it when he does that. The bathroom is beside me. It is personal preference whether you decide to stamp, like you want to close it sideways, or if you want to close it top to bottom. I tend to prefer top to bottom just because it's out of my way, but I have done projects, and we'll do a project later here where I have both of them going at once. Not obviously not at the exact same time, but going. So whichever way works for you. Now, it also comes with this black piece of foam that has a lovely Stampin' Up! Logo on it. We can't even see that. So the reason it has this, and you will see it when we get further in, is photopolymer stamps. Here, I'll just pull it off because I got one there. So you notice with the photopolymer stamps, I do have one that's not photopolymer. Let me see if I can grab that without. There we go. This one's mounted, and I went to a great deal of work to mount it, so I don't want to take it off right now. So you'll notice that the clear mount stamps are thicker because they have foam on the back. Photopolymer, trying to find the best background, does not. So this piece of foam is basically simulating that. Now they did come out, so this is what you get when you order it. The Stamparatus itself, the 2 plates, the 2 magnets, and this piece of foam. That's the, let's have this all ready to go too. This is what you get. It's in page 144 of the annual catalog. So $67 plus shipping and tax, that's a Canadian price. Gets you everything you need to get started. After it came out, and you'll notice a lot of what I was using, I had to actually change one of my plans for my card so I could purposely use something that was not photopolymer, because this helps a lot with the same thing that photopolymer stamps help with. If you're doing 2-step stamping, or you're trying to line things up, or you got multiple pieces, then photopolymer see-through. So it makes it easier. It does not make it foolproof. The Stamparatus goes almost that far. So because there's a lot more photopolymer stamps, Stampin' Up! Came out with an extra foam mat. And I think part of it was, so this is how people would have used this, right? They would have put this down and they would have, try to get one that's not really filthy, put down a piece of paper over top of it so you have something to stamp on. Now, if you put just a plain piece of paper over top of it, what you're looking at is white, right? There's no guides, there's no, so to line things up is a lot more difficult. You can buy, here, I'll switch my order of how I was going to show you stuff. You can buy these little packages of mats, and on one side they have centimeters, and on one side they have inches. So this makes it a lot easier when you are going to line your stuff up to be able to do that. You could just put a piece of paper here, and that's, I think when it first started, people were just putting a piece of paper here. But now you can get these if you want. You can also take the bigger grid paper and cut it down. You get a fair bit of these. I've had this for a while, and here, I'll reach over. I used them a fair bit before I pulled them out. Look at me just reaching in the recycle bin. So this was a couple different projects on this one. This one's had 1, 2, 3, at least 4 different projects on it, plus the backside. So you can get a fair bit of use out of them before you have to replace them. But it is definitely handy having those grid marks. Grid paper, you get 50 of them for $8.75 plus shipping and tax. So these little pieces of paper are handy. But what they did come out with, because more people are now using photopolymer stamps, because there's just that much more of them, is this grid mat. Ooh, I feel like a catalog. I don't know. I wasn't originally planning on telling you all the catalog and prices, but what the heck? This is $8 plus shipping and tax. So this one comes in, and this one you can wipe off too if you spill over. And I know because I stamped off the side of it. So this is the mat and the grid in one piece. So for a lot of what you do, you don't need scrap paper. For some of what you do, you might want a piece of scrap paper. So I guess you can pick and choose, but the black mat comes with it automatically. So I'm going to start with this mat, and I'm going to start with our first project. And actually, before I get started, I will tell you the one sort of not specific to stamping necessarily, but one huge benefit to this. My mom has arthritis in her hands. I know other people have different things. And it's harder to hold a tiny little block and maybe get the exact right pressure and do it over and over again if you're trying to do a bunch of stamps. Try to reach for a block. So our blocks are pretty good. They have little things in them, but even so, trying to get them down and get everything lined up. Bifocals here. I just thought of another one. Bifocals. Bifocals. A lot of people I know do as well. Actually, I don't think they're, at my age, I like to call them progressives instead, but technically they're bifocals. So if you're trying to stick your head over top and you're trying to get the right angle and you're trying to line things up, sometimes it's just not right. So just to make a happy stamper, right there is a good enough reason. Now, as far as actual techniques go, the original and probably main reason for the Stamparatus to begin with was stamp positioning. And part of it was just simply trying to get your stamp straight. If you're stamping directly onto a card base, and most of my samples, and this is my first one here, I'll give you a sneak peek of what I'm about to show you. And here I'll, so Stamparatus, awesome, awesome tool. Does not help if you drop your ink block on your piece of paper. There is no helping for that. That's just Tracy needs to learn to do better. So ignore that because that's where I dropped my ink pad. I think I said stamp block, but it was my ink pad I dropped. So this is what we're going to do. I want a nice straight sentiment, and I want this. And most of what I did, I was doing on layers. I love layers. But you can stamp directly onto a card. Now, if you're going to stamp directly on a card, you don't want to screw up. It's one thing to take this layer, and if you're wrong, you flip it over, boom, away you go. Or to stamp on a little strip. But if you're stamping directly on a card base, you want to get it right the first time. So what I'm going to do, because this is just this was so cute, and I'm not sure what else I'm going to add to finish it, but I'm using one of our note cards. And I'm doing this on purpose to show you that this note card is made out of like the thick white cardstock and folded over. If you do want to make this a different way and it's too big, you could lay it flat, but in this case, it will totally fit. So I'm going to line this up. And the reason you want to line it up is so if it moves or you have to position it again, you put it back in where you started. Now, this is where the grids come in super handy. And I know you can't see the exact lines, and it doesn't even matter what the lines say. I just know that this is the corner. Now, on some of the other ones, you will notice I have written with pen on pieces of paper to say what corner it is or different things. This is going to work, so I'm not too worried. And then we put our little magnets down, and it will hold our piece of paper in place. So I don't know if I can do this and still be in range, but see, it's not going anywhere. So even with the double cardstock. So now what I want to do is I want to line this up. Oops, I missed step one. Sorry, I do need a piece of paper. I was so excited, and I'm in my usual mode of no, I just put a piece of paper down and stamp. Okay, so what you want to do if you're starting, because I honestly I wouldn't have lined it up first. I would have just started stamping. Okay, so we're going to put our card here, which is going to line up. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what else I was doing. Okay, so this is where we're going to put our card when I put it on the matching thing underneath. So I know this is the corner I want. So when I'm going to line up my stamp, I'm going to line it up on one of these nice little lines. And I probably am going to have to stick my head in the camera a couple times, which, oh, maybe not. But yes, because I was in a rush this morning, I have a ball cap on. And I have it on backwards because that's such a good look for me. So gangsta stamping. Okay, so I've lined this up on that line. I'm going to close this. I'm going to pick it up. Now, photopolymer stamps are a little bit sticky. So every time you do that, it's going to move a little bit. Now, because I'm just doing this to test, I didn't put the magnets down, but I could easily have put the magnets down. Now, I'm going to remember things as we go because I have all these props out here, so I don't forget to tell you all the pieces. And with any luck, by the time I'm done, I will have remembered every piece that I was supposed to tell you. This is an ink spot. This is a stamp pad. And if I'm going with, I didn't take another one out. If you're going with some of the other colors, this is a full size. So you'll see how big a regular stamp pad is and how big these ink spots are. The ink spots come in our paper pumpkin kit. I have a huge collection of them. We don't necessarily have every color. So in some cases, and there are some reasons you're going to want to use the bigger stamps, but in a lot of cases, the best thing for the Stamparatus is an ink spot. Stampin' Up! Does sell a package of 5 uninked ones. So if you don't have them, or if you're going to be doing a big project and you know you need them, there's 5 of them in here. They're uninked. So with the re-inker, you just ink them up and you can pick whichever 5 colors you want. So you can just get the ink spots if you want. But if not, if you have a bunch of them, as I do, they are much handier to use than the big one. And the main reason is, I'm going to try to pull here, I'm going to do this backwards. Nope, that's not going to work. Can't quite keep everything in screen. So if you're taking a huge ink pad and you're going over top of your stamp with the big one, and you'll see because I'm going to use the black one, you tend to hit around here. Now, for the most part, it's not a big deal. But if you do hit far enough out, and then when you're closing to rub, you actually rub where you hit that ink, you will transfer ink to somewhere on your card you don't want. So with the ink spots, you just have a lot more directed. And you'll notice one of the cards we're going to do, we're not even going to stamp the whole thing with the ink spot. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to stamp up with the ink spot, and then we're going to do like this. And this is a small one, so I'm just like running my finger across it. Now, see, I got that actually lined up the first time. So you can see now on the, what am I doing? On the grid paper, that I actually have that lined up along that one dotted line. So for me, that works perfect. If you don't, you peel it off, you put it down, you stamp it, and you do it till you get it right. I have the luck of the camera with me today, and I got it right the first try. So now I'm going to put my cardstock on, my nice good cardstock that I want to stamp directly onto, my little note card. I'm going to ink up, which you can't quite see, but trust me, I'm inking up my stamp again. And then I'm going to close it down. See, I did it even with the little one. I'm going to do this. I'm going to very carefully lift this back up again. You see right here, that's where I hit the plastic with my ink spot. So you can do it even with an ink spot. You're not immune to that. But that's the one where if I had pushed here and got too close to the paper, I would have transferred that ink where I didn't want it. So there we go. I have a perfectly lined up in my corner where I wanted it sentiment. So now I'm going to close that. So now I'm going to build my card. One of the other reasons that the Stamparatus is awesome is when you are stamping with dark inks, or especially the black inks, sometimes it's hard to get a good coverage. It is also hard to get a good coverage on a very solid stamp. So we're going to do ourselves a penguin. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just taking the penguin, and you'll notice I'm putting it like stamped down as if I was going to stamp. Like if I had a block in my hand, this is how I would stamp, right? It'd be stuck to here. So I'm doing that to line it up because I want to, for the most part, center it there. Okay. I'm so excited to show you all these projects. I'm going ahead of myself. This is a Simply Chamois. It's still in its sealed bag. So this is what Stampin' Up! Came out with the same year that they came out with the Stamparatus. And I think the reason they did is because if you wanted to do this card and you want to do it in multiple colors, or you just wanted to clean it off in between, because you don't want to pull it off and have to reposition it every time. But if you just wanted to clean it in between because you're going to change colors or somebody else is going to go or whatever, you need to wipe it. Now you could use baby wipes, but baby wipes, you got to find the right one. And this is what happens with baby wipes, because I did start earlier today with baby wipes. And the baby wipes, all the ink that goes into the wipe doesn't stay there. The beauty of the Stamparatus is all the ink that goes on here. See how gungy this is? This is half of one of these. I find this to be too big. So when I get one of them, I cut them in half. Now what you do is, this is dry, but when you get it wet, this is what it looks like. And mine all started looking like this. And then I started using them. And it wipes the ink off the stamp and it keeps the ink in there. Because you see how filthy this is? I don't have any of it on my hand. It stays, this is wet and it stays in there. So this Stamparatus is like the best thing. And I will admit, when I started earlier, I was rushing. I was being lazy. I grabbed the wipes because they were close because this was dry. And I regret it instantly because this is what happens. So the reason I'm bringing the wipe up is before you go to pull your stamp off, a good idea to wipe it off. So you can wipe your stamp off. Now, like I said, and I will show you later when we do it, we're going to do different colors, but I could wipe my stamp off. Well, there I am sort of in, and stamp it a different color and do a different card in a different color and not have to reposition every time because I haven't moved my stamp. In this case, I just wanted it straight. One of the other reasons, okay, so I got straight. I'm going to check these off as I go, make sure I do them all. The other reason is multiples. If I wanted to make 20 of these cards, do I want to line this up 20 times to make it straight? Absolutely not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up once, and then I'm going to put 20 pieces of note card in here. Not at once, obviously. I'm going to put 20 note cards through this process, and I'm going to stamp them, move them out, stamp them, move them out while that thing is in place. Because every one of them, I'm just going to line up in this corner, and I'm going to mass produce it right through. And I can do it in stages. And if I had the two plates, if they weren't all tied up doing other things, I could put the sentiment on this plate. And I'm going to show you on the next one. And I could put the penguin on another plate. And I could do one card at a time if I wanted. So I could stamp blue, or ink it up in blue, stamp the sentiment, then ink up the black penguin, then ink up the other one, and just keep layering them and then move it out and then do the next card. So for doing multiples, absolutely, this is going to save you. Now, I'm going to do my dark black ink, and you're going to see why. So this is, I haven't fully even decided on this card, but I do want everything kind of offset over here. So this is what I'm centering on. I'm not centering on the card, I'm centering on the sentiment. So I have my penguin where I think I want him to go. And I could put my piece of paper back, and I could trial and error it on the paper if I wanted to, but like I said, just doing this. This is how I normally do it. Now, I told you before, photopolymer is very sticky sometimes. So this just moved everything. That's okay. I fully expected it, which is why I know that this is the corner that I want this to go in. Now, I'm using my big stamp pad because I don't have an ink spot that's black. And I'm going to stamp up my penguin. I'm going to try to keep moving this in screen. Now, I have this fairly well stamped up. I can see through here what I got. I have already hit the side over here, a very big piece. And you see how this is far enough over? That is for sure going to land over here. So even before I start stamping, I'm going to do this. I'm going to wipe that off with my handy dandy chamois. I'm going to put this back so it's flat. So now I'm going to go down with my penguin, who I think I inked up enough. I guess we're about to find out. And I'm going to give him a little love tap there. Believe it or not, yes, I did. Now, black is notoriously bad. This is small, and you'll actually see it more on when we do one of the, I think it's 2 stamps away. The bigger the stamp, the harder it is to get a solid coverage. So in this case, because it's really just a line, it's a thick line, but it's just a line. I actually got pretty good coverage the first time. But if I didn't, the beauty of this is this card didn't go anywhere. My stamp didn't go anywhere. So all I have to do is ink it back up. And even if it was just, let's say, here, I'll just pretend. Let's say his head didn't get enough ink. I'm going to put a bit of it more, and I'm only going to put it on the head. I don't need to waste ink on the whole rest. The rest was fine. I'm going to put it back down, and I'm going to put a little more pressure on his head because apparently I missed it the first time. And there you go. Now you'll see that he's lined up, right? I didn't make it. I didn't offset it a bit. I don't have the, oh, darn, I missed it by a centimeter, or I guess that'd be an obvious one, by a millimeter or by a fraction. It lined up perfectly because everything is set in the same spot. So with dark ink, with certain ink, with big stamps, big floral stamps, big different stuff, I'm going to show you a background stamp and you'll see that. You definitely want to have the option to go back more than once. Now, the other thing is, these penguins are adorable, aren't they? Let's just say that. They have little feet that go with them. And a little beak that goes with it. Now, the hardest part of the beak is it's going to want to stick to your finger as you're going to want to try to put it down. So we're just going to use this is called, I'm pretty sure it's called the Take Your Pick tool. And it has a little spatula or a pointy end. It just kind of twists in here. And then this other end has putty in it. So for picking up little embellishments or sequins and stuff like that, this thing is genius. When it first came out, I couldn't remember what it was called. So I kept calling it Pick Your Nose tool. I have never done that with this tool. Do not be worried if you come to craft with me. That's what it is. So every time I go to say the actual name of it, I cannot remember what it is because I want to say pick your nose tool. Okay, but that helped me. Let's see if I can. These are clear, so I'm not sure how well they're going to show up. So you can see that they're lined up, and you can see, well, from my angle anyways, I can see that I moved his nose. All right. So I now have these lined up where the penguin's going to go. What I'm going to do, again, I'm going to wipe the stamp off because I'm going to try to keep as clean as possible. I'm going to pick this back up. I left the penguin on it because I'm going to do more than one card, right? I'm going to pick it straight up. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to put it back in again. Now, you'll notice the penguin is here. Now, the penguin is on the top side now, not on the bottom. But I don't want to have to reposition this every time. But I'm going to go down with this, and I'm going to pick up those two pieces. And because they don't have any ink on them, of course, they're a little dry and sticky, so they moved everything again. No worries. We'll just put it right back. Now, again, you could put your piece of paper in. You could stamp. You could make sure everything is exactly where you want it, but I'm just going with it. So now I'm going to take my yellow ink, and I'm going to ink up my feet and my beak. I'm going to come right back down. And voila, I got me a cute arse penguin. Sorry, YouTube people. Isn't that adorable? I love him. Now, he does need some kind of bow tie or something, I think. And if you wanted to make a little girl one, I guess you could make a little necklace, or you can have a bandana. And you can do whatever you want to these penguins. But I do like layers, so I'm going to make him a bow tie. I'm going to pop it up. I know he will have at least that much on him. You can put some little snowflakes around, whatever. But if I wanted to make, like I said, a whole bunch of these penguins, or I just didn't want to screw up on the penguin, this is the way to do it, right? Position, try, boom. Now, I can go through, and the next time I do this, I can put another piece of paper down. And like I said, if I hadn't already taken it off, I could have my other door or my other plate here. So I could put a card down. I could close this way, stamp the sentiment. I'm going to start this way. I can pop this one down and stamp the penguin, flip it over, pop it down and stamp the feet and the beak. Done. Move the card, put another one in, and do the whole thing again. So seriously, multiples. If you're doing swaps or you want to do like the family Christmas card and you're going to make 20 of the same one, that's the way to do it. Let me see. I don't think I wiped those off. So I'm just going to pop these off quickly and put them through. So what did I do? So I did getting it straight, two-step stamping, which is the penguin is one step, the feet and the beak are the second step. We have other stamp sets. I may or may not grab quickly enough. Look at that. We have other stamp sets like this. You stamp the outline of the strawberry. You stamp this on the inside. So same thing, two plates. You can set one up to close and stamp the line, one set up to stamp this. And you can do trial and error on a piece of paper first, like I said, so you can get this perfectly lined up just inside of like you want. And then when it comes time to do it, you just stamp the line, stamp the inside, stamp the line. So two-step stamping. There's flowers, leaves, there's all sorts of stamp sets that will do that. So we have straight two-step stamping, multiples, dark ink. So we're up to 4 already. Where did I put it? Oh, there we go. One of the things I'm going to show you as far as multiple goes is our kits. Now, when we get our kits, put all these different pieces here. Sorry, I just about knocked the kit off the desk, and I'm stretching. There we go. So you get the kits. Kits are awesome. Kits are quick, easy. All the work is done for you. I figured out where I put my red stamp spots. When you get them, and I did a little helping my video along. When you get them, there is usually a piece of cardstock in somewhere that looks like this. Sorry, those are gold there. There we go. So this is half. I actually cut this in half just so I could prep half and keep half so you could see. So these are die cut, and you have to pop them out. Right? I find these ones at least have a gold trim on them. Sometimes they just look like this. And I find it really hard to see the edge enough. Again, we mentioned to the progressives, to see the edge enough. I like to pop them out anyways. But if I'm doing multiples, so now I've popped out, I've taken the other half. So now I've popped out this many of them. Do I really want to have to line up every single time and make sure I'm straight? And in the case of these ones, if I mess up, yes, I can flip it over, but as soon as I flip it over, I'll lose the gold. So you really don't want to mess it up any more than you have to. So with these ones, I'm going to show you how easy it is to do these with the Stamparatus. So here's the sheet they originally came for. Yep, this is what I'm doing. I was trying to think which way this would go. So I'm going to pretend like I'm tying it on here somewhere. I could tie it like this and tie it on the penguin, but whichever way you decide you're going to do it. So I'm doing mine this way. So I'm going to line it up. And this is where the other one was before. I'll use a different one just to show you that I'm using a different one. So this does not matter where this goes. And actually, I need the dimensions on it. So I'll just do this so you're not looking at the other one. So I'm going to set this up just like this, just wherever. The one thing you don't want to do with the Stamparatus is you don't want to do this. Right? You don't want to crank it all the way up into the corner and then pick this one as the one you're trying to stamp, like somewhere up here. Because when you do the hinges, they're only going to go so like down so far close to the hinge, right? Like they have all this mechanism in place. Out here, I can make it touch right all the way. Most of the time, the magnet's going to be what's going to stop it, or the stamp. But you're less likely to get good coverage the closer you are to the hinge, because you can't get the entire thing pushed down as much as you want. So you don't want to go there. I tend to default everything out here, but you'll notice with the one stamp we're going to do that it's a bigger stamp and you want to be a little closer in. So we're going to start over here. And again, it doesn't matter. I'm not using grid lines or anything really, so I'm just going to put it on. For my own, I don't know, personal preference, I like them to be straight. If they're cockeyed every time, it throws me off. So, okay, so I'm going to do this. Now, this is what I'm stamping it, right? So this is going to be my trial and error. I'm going to put my stamp. This says, Merriest Christmas to you. And I'm going to put it in here. And I'm using the grid lines, not for measurement or anything, just to get a straight line. And if I didn't have grid lines, if I just had a blank piece of paper, then really I'm just eyeballing it, basing it on the edge. I'm very particular about spacing. I'm trying to get equal distance all around and trying to get it where I want. So I'm going to put it there. I'm going to pick up my stamp. I'm going to put everything back where it's supposed to go. And I'm going to stamp this guy with red. Then I'll put him down. Now, when I look at that, I'm on fire today because it's straight, it's in the center, it's what I want. Now, when I go to stamp my little tags, all I have to do is take this tag, put it in this little spot. I'm going to ink up my stamp again. I'm going to put it down. Oh, you know what I never accounted for? Okay, problem solved. We'll just adjust. I never counted for the hole in the side. I was just filling the entire thing. Because you see, this one is so easy. I didn't do it ahead of time. Lesson for Tracy. Now, this is still workable, but as you'll notice, I forgot that there was a hole here punched in this tag. So this is much closer than I really want it. So I'm going to pop this guy out again. And now I know that I really want where the C is. I want the C to be probably this far over. I want it a lot farther than it was. I do like the way it was centered, but I want to move it over to about here because I think that will still give me my spacing. So I'm going to pop that down again. See, in this case, I don't. This is what's moving is the grid paper, not the actual template that I'm using. So as long as I put this back in the corner, I know I'm always going to line that thing up. So once again with the ink, back down, and I could see on here. Yes, I moved this over, what is that, 1/8 of an inch? So that's going to work for me. Now, I'll pop this out. So now I'm going to put this in. And if I had done it right the first time, on the stamp set that is the oval, you would do the same thing, right? You would just pop the ovals in. So on something like this, there is no hole. So centering it would have actually worked. But I forgot that had that in there. So okay. So I'm stamped again, inked again. See, much better. Now here's the thing though. I noticed I went off the stamp. Again, beauty of the Stamparatus. I don't know if you can see. I'm going to try to get it nice and close without blocking my camera so I can see. You notice the C and the H and the R. Not so good, right? They're a little patchy, whereas the rest of it is stamped nice and solid. That's okay, because I'm going to stamp up. I'm going to ink up the beginning. The beginning, I mean this side of the stamp. I'm going to do that. And those are the ones I didn't get the first time, so I'm just going to put a little extra there. And now, she's beautiful. Now I have a nice solid coverage. So there it goes. Now, I just realized here's another use for the nose tool. These things, I don't want to like mess up my edge. These things usually they'll come out. I don't want to move all this too much. Usually that you can flick them and they'll come back out. But if not, putty pops that baby back out. Now I don't actually know if I'm going to make all of them say the same thing like all what the other ones are going to say, but well, I've got this going because I'm going to pop this kit together later. I'm going to do one more. Oh, see, that one worked the first time. Now in this case, I'm done, so it doesn't matter. I can just pick the piece whole thing up. So there we go, multiple labels. Now, you might only have 6, you might have 3. I still think it's worth it because what you have done is saved your nice gold foil labels, got them straight every time. And if you're picky about that kind of thing, it will make your life a lot easier. I made this template, and I still have this template, believe it or not, from quite a while ago, actually. When did I make those? It's got to be going on 3 or 4 years ago. But I have found that I've used it since. I'm trying to reach into my kit to find my stamps. It's not working. There we go. I made a bunch of cards. I think I made 45 of them for a special request. And all I did was, this may or may not be the right size, but I made this template. I just made this. This is just like the cardstock that's on the back of the paper or something. It's just a little bit heavier than paper. And I just taped it like this. And I popped my magnets on to hold it down. So I'm basically making my own label template, right? I stamped thank you where I wanted it, so it was straight. And this was a solid piece that went across the card, and then there was stuff, attached here. But I wanted the thank you to be the same distance every time. I wanted it to be straight, and I didn't want to have to line it up 45 times. Okay, this is not the exact size piece of paper, but pretend it was. So then I had a bunch of strips of paper, and every time I would just put them in, I would stamp, I would pop it out, put my next strip of paper in. So I just made myself a homemade template. But yes, for sure for labels, but even multiples of anything, this will save you time and brain space. Okay, I'm just going to keep making a mess and throw everything off to the side. It's a good thing I was organized to begin with, because that's all gone to pot now. Just hope I don't need to reach back for any of those things later. Okay, so I did labels. There we go. Now, I'm going to show you another non-Stampin' Up! Tool here we're going to use. These are background stamps. And if you like background stamps, and I do, you want the Stamparatus. Right there is enough of a reason, because these stamps are big. Now there is a stamp block. I can clean up my stamp room and I can reach that is this big. It is a big, heavy beast, and it is a lot harder to get down. I'm not sure, somebody can correct me, but I am not sure. I don't think I have ever seen a background stamp that was photopolymer. I think they are all clear. So this is your clear stamp, and this is what it does. Isn't this pretty? Reflection. But here's the thing. You have one chance. With a stamp on a block, you have one chance to put this straight down and back up again. If you've missed any spots, now look how big this surface area is. You can't see through this stamp to line it back up again. So if you're going to be doing lots with background stamps, or even if you just, I have a favorite, the buffalo check one. Sorry, I keep turning around to reach stuff and I realize you may not be able to hear me. The buffalo check one is just awesome. I love it. And it's black ink too. So it's twofer. It's a big stamp set and black ink. And I usually stamp it on red cardstock. So to get a really nice, good coat, I'll find myself self-stamping 2 or 3 times, and it's worth it because it's an awesome background. But I for sure want to do that on the Stamparatus because I would never line it up more than once. This is the buffalo check. Now, if you'll notice, this was one of my earlier attempts, and I did kind of like it because it just looked really worn out. But you'll notice it's not a very good clear stamp the first try. So, but like I said, I'm never going to line that back up again. Now, you'll notice, and you can do it this way. Yes, I should do it the right way. You can do it this way or this way. But you see how much this background stamp fills this place up? So, and you still want to be able to put your paper firmly down. So I'm still going to jimmy over to the side here, but I want my magnets to have enough room. In this case, they're broken, so that kind of helps in a way. So I'm going to be over here somewhere, and this is the piece of paper that I'm doing. And I'm going off the edge a little bit. Or this is the size of paper that I'm starting with. And you'll notice that I'm going to stamp right to the edge of it. But that's okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of paper. I'm going to go bigger than what I want to start with. I'm going to take this piece of paper, and then I'm going to trim probably an 1/8, maybe 1/4, depending how well I stamp the edges, quite honestly. The intent is that I would take an 1/8 off around it. So I have somewhere to put my magnets to hold it in place. Then I'm going to trim them off afterwards. If you wanted to start with a really big piece of paper, and if it was white cardstock, I probably would, but with the colored cardstock, I tend to, be a little more frugal. So I know I need to trim this down a little bit. So I'm just going to be putting my things on the edges. But I could make a big piece of cardstock, put lots of space for my magnets, and then put this down and then just trim it afterwards. So I'm gonna go like this. So right now I'm just going to put my stamp down so I know where I'm picking it up. And again, if you want, because this is just piece of paper, I'm going to go like this, right on my grid mat. So I know that that corner is the corner that I line my cardstock up with. So I want to make sure that when I put this down, I'm completely covering my cardstock. And I'm going to pick up this stamp. Oh, do you notice the bounce? I figured eventually I'd figure this out. You see this? I am not going to get a good stamp with this. Now, I wish people were commenting, and I wish I could do this live, because then I could ask people, who knows why this is not going to work? It's not the hinges. I am close to the top, but it's not the hinges. It's because I am using a clear mount stamp, and I did not take out the extra piece of foam that I need for my photopolymer. As you can see, my magnets hold the whole piece of foam in place. There we go. As you can see, you do not need that with the clear mats. So I will take that out because that was what my problem was. Okay, so I do know that this is where I wanted to put this. I'm just going to put a little bit on the corners here. Oh, you know what? I just realized that's not going to work. Okay, forget I said that. Oops, see that? How quickly those things went together. Yep, I screwed that up, people. I was trying to be cheap with the dark green cardstock, but I see now that that is not going to work because my stamp is not going to hit flat. The last time I did this, I was being all fancy. The last time I did this, I did white cardstock and I did the green on it, but I wanted to try to do it backwards for you guys so you could see, because one of the colors of ink we have that is notoriously bad for taking multiple times to stamp is the white craft ink. So that's what I was going to use. Okay, so here we do. We're going the other way. This is an entire card base. I was going to use it as a card base. I just won't have a layer. Okay, so here's my card base. My card is going to open like this. So I'm going to, how about I screwed that up? I'm going to go like this. Right, and I'm going to have this, and it's not going to go all the way to the edges, but that's okay because it's going to work. And I don't know that there's really an up or down on this. So it doesn't really matter which way it's going to go. So I need to go. So here's one of the things I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to write landscape. And beside this one, I'm going to write portrait. So if I'm doing this next time, because I will reuse this because I barely used it, right? It will help me remember that portrait worked this way, but if I want to fit it in landscape, I got to inch it over at least this far. And the reason I'm going to inch it over that far is because I'm going to put, that's not going to work. I'm going to have to do it this way on the portrait one. Okay, so we're trial and error. See, I told you that no matter how many times you do this, you're still learning. Now I'm just proving it to you. Okay, so we're going to have to do it this way. So I am going to do it landscape. How I want my card to go. Because my card is going to stick out, I was going to go down this way with it, but then I realized that I'm going to be too close to the edge with my magnets and I'm likely to knock them. So we're going to go back here. So I have my crease of my card now lined up with my portrait corner. And I'm going to put my magnets here, because then they're well into the cardstock and well away from the edge, and I don't have to worry about them sliding on me. Okay, so now I'm going to just put my big stamp set down, or snap down. And here we go. Now, again, 16 tries later and a bunch of trial and error. There we go. This is white craft ink. And I, again, don't have a spot for it. And you'll notice it picks up some of the other colors sometimes. So it looks a little gross, but it works. So here's what I'm going to do. Big background stamp. Wouldn't matter if this was a colored one or not. You can see as I start to stamp that I'm even doing this, I'm not getting full coverage. Like it's a lot of surface area. I did forget to mention right at the beginning that one of the things you want to do when you're stamping, and it works better, I need two of them if I can have it back there, is if you put your stamp case underneath this, it works so that you're not constantly bouncing on the plate. These plates are pretty sturdy, but I would imagine if you hit hard enough, you can make it work. Now, I'm getting a lot on the corners and less in the middle, which is, typical for how it's going to go. I'm going to push everything back onto the table. Okay, so I have this inked up, and I'm going to go straight down. Now, because this is such a big surface area, one of the demonstrations I went to suggested this. This is a whiteboard eraser. So this is felt and this. So instead of trying to go like this, or like somebody I know, get in there with your elbow, these actually work quite well, because where your hand will stick on the plastic, this doesn't. And so when you're doing something bigger, like I wouldn't necessarily do this for a sentiment, but with a big stamp like this, much more surface area. I'm going to lift this up. And actually that worked remarkably well. So I did have it did shift just a tiny bit. So you can see, does this not look awesome? This is why I wanted to do white on dark, because it is such a whoa. So all over here, this is great. It's a little dodgy in that corner, and it is very dodgy in that entire corner. So you'll notice that's the part that is closer to the hinge. So because it's a little closer up, it just didn't get the press that it should have. Now, instead of stamping this entire thing up, because Lord knows the rest has got lots on it, I am just going to stamp up the corner I need, because it could be that I don't have enough ink on it. It could be that I just didn't press hard enough in that particular place, because like I said, I'm close to the hinge. I'm going to put that right back down again, and I'm going to do this some more. And I'm going to put a little bit of extra pressure in this corner. I'm going to pop this bad boy back up. Oh, God, I love white on green. Okay, and you'll notice that I'm taking these off. And you know why? Because it's perfect the second time. Now, if it wasn't, don't take those off, because you won't line it back up again. I mean, good chance that you'll get it close enough. But because I'm doing the corner here and not an actual edge, you could be just like a fraction of a millimeter out. This is too big of a stamp to try to line up all of the various different pieces. But is that not pretty? Whew. Now, white craft ink takes a little bit to dry. Isn't this going to be a gorgeous card? Look at this. Like that. You barely need anything else on this card. This background stamp is just phenomenal. Okay, so I'm going to put this up here to dry. But you'll notice that it took 2 to get that right. Like I said, the buffalo plaid one, 3 usually, maybe even more to get it to work. So you don't want to be trying to do that straight down, pick it back up, re-ink it, and then go, let me see if I can line this whole thing up on a block. Definitely don't want to be doing that. The one thing I will recommend, and this is just personal use, but is I wouldn't wipe the white craft ink off with your chamois. I would either have a separate chamois, or in this case, I would use the baby wipes, because it doesn't soak in like the other ink does. Like the other ink soaks into the chamois holds it all in, it works like it's supposed to. But the craft ink is a little, I don't know, a little thicker maybe, and it doesn't soak in as much. So it will be on there, and sometimes when you go to wipe the next stamp, you're going to wipe that right back off again. So I'm going to give this a much cleaner wipe later. I am just doing this sort of a preliminary. Maybe I can get the white from here onto my hand and get rid of the color. I'm just doing this so that when I accidentally throw something on it later, because I'm not paying enough attention, it's not as messy as it could be. So I'm going to give that one a good clean later. I'm going to put it up here with my card base. Again, let me show you just how stunning white inked on Evening Evergreen cardstock looks. Wow. Okay, that's awesome. All right, so big background stamps. And Tracy making a whole lot of noise in the video. Check. There was another stamp, I think it was last year, and it wasn't a full background stamp, but it was a pretty good size stamp, and it was a whole bunch of different flowers. I don't actually own that stamp. And because I made that one all white, I'm not going to show you the same thing. But another thing you could do with a background stamp, and it's not specific to the Stamparatus, but it would also work, is you can take that big background stamp and you can like stamp this corner one color and this corner one color and this, and get it all groovy and stamp it down, and then you'll have just a better chance at coverage too. But it's just kind of a cool technique. You can put multiple inks on the one stamp. So what is next on my list? Step stamping. Oh, there we go. I have all my little things set out, but not in order. That'd be too easy. Okay, so step stamping. This is, and I don't know if this was an intentional thing when they did it. I do know when the original Misty, I think it's called a Misty, the other company's machine came out. It was something similar to this. I've never actually seen one, but I know when it first came out, people raved about how well this was set up because of how easy the plates came on and off, and how, you know, the actual mechanics of it worked. So something tells me this was a newer thing that somebody realized that you could do with this afterwards. This is step stamping. And sometimes when you stamp with soft suede, it kind of reads as gold. In this case, it read a little more like brown. So I'm going to switch up the color when I show you how I did this. But although I do love it in this brown color, maybe it's just because I love this brown color. So in this case, I was going this way on. You can also do it, I'll make it make more sense this way. You can also do it going top to bottom in different steps. What you're going to notice on this piece of cardstock is I eyeballed it as best I could. And because I thought, well, if I stamp here and then I go over, they'll be centered. But you'll notice that I cut this one off on the edge, and this one, I didn't. So this is because, again, I did not try anything with a piece of paper. I just started stamping on cardstock because that's how I roll. So when we go to do this one, I'm going to shimmy my paper over a little bit from the mark that I put on my paper, because I did a little trial one on here. Let me use this one. So this is what I had, right? This was my corner that I had marked off. And if I left my stamp right there, I would go, and you can see right there, this little brown spot, that would be the rest of the ornament. So I went off just that much, but I had a little bit more room to give. So if I'm doing my math right, and I cover this one up, my math, it's not really math, it's more directional, but I am really left-right challenge. I do this every time I need to know left and right, so I can see the L for left. So I've covered up the little bit that I went off, and that looks to be about the same amount past this line, because I can see where the grid line is here. So I think I have enough space that this one's not going to go off and this whole thing will be on. So now I'm going to put my magnets, and you'll notice I'm putting them at the bottom. Oops. Okay. Again, live video, folks. How about let's try a piece of paper that is not already stamped. Okay, so again, here was my corner. I'm going to push over enough to cover it. And I'm going to double check that I haven't overstepped my. Okay, so, and I'm putting my magnets at the bottom because I want my stamping to go at the top. And I am just going to make a little, oops. The magnet is so strong, it is sticking to my pen. I'm just going to make a little line here so that if it does move, it shouldn't. Clear mount is much better at releasing from the paper. So there we go. But just in case. So now I'm getting ready to stamp. So I have my stamp lined up. Now, when I did this, and I didn't want to move it again because I had already done all the math. So what I did the same as what I had done before. I put the stamp down, and I went in, I kind of went eyeballing. I went, okay, it should be about like this. So I put the stamp in what I thought was the middle, closed the lid, put the stamp in the middle to measure them all. Then I put the stamp down on the end, closed the lid, and then I started. So I have not actually moved it from that spot. The only thing I have adjusted from when I made this card was I shimmied the piece of cardstock over. So in theory, this works for us. Okay, so I'm going to use yellow this time. Crushed curry, as it were, to see if I can maybe get it a bit more gold. Really, I should have just stuck with smoky slate because I could see silver. So I can see as I'm about to do this that I shimmied too far. So I'm going to shimmy back a little bit. These magnets really don't want to let me shimmy. Okay, because you see, as I was going to lay this down, I can see the edge of the label, and I know the edge of the label lines up with the edge of the stamp. They don't always. Sometimes the stamp is not centered and it could be shifted, but I can see by looking, because I guess in my mind I did that without actually saying it out loud. So I think now this is going to be on. Oh, it is just on, but it is on. So you'll notice I now have that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lift this straight up. I'm going to move over one, and I'm going to put it back in. So I've just moved one notch, I guess, over. Notches in my stamping belt, I guess. I'm going to ink up. I'm going to put this down. I'm going to lift it up. I'm going to move over one. Ink it up. And I guess this is where the stairs come from. You just one step at a time. Step stamping or stair stamping, whichever one you're going to go with. It does not matter if you ink first or move it first, as long as you remember to do both. And as you can see, I'm just working my way across. Now, as I get farther over, I have less and less stability in my plate because I got all this much hanging off. So push on the side that has the hinges, not this side, because you don't want to rock your stamp at all. Oh my goodness, people, it's like I know what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to take this piece of paper out so you can get the full effect of just how well that worked out. And this will tell you why I tend to just wing it and hope for the best. I mean, I did do a little bit of planning and then I just winged it at the end. But look at that. Each one of those has like the exact same 0.5 millimeter spacing from the edge. Trial and error, my friends. But there we go. I have a whole set of ornaments to go across the top of my card now. So I'm going to put a sentiment on here. I'm going to put a piece of ribbon. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to put a piece of ribbon. I'm going to die cut some tree branches to put across the top, and then I'm just going to put a piece of ribbon in maybe one corner. And I'm going to stamp a sentiment here. And I now have my garland that I was aiming for with all my multiple ornaments. Now you could, if you wanted these ornaments to be different colors, I didn't. You could stamp like one set one color, one set another color. You also could put it on your Stamparatus and hand color each different ornament and put it down. Now, when you hand color with the marker, you can't hand color the stamps with the blends because they're alcohol based and they don't work. But you can do them with the Stampin' Write marker. perhaps not in a what is this? Melon Mambo, a bright pink color, but you could stamp, like you could color and put it down. And when you do them, sometimes they're a little grainy. They're not, you don't get quite the coverage. So with the Stamparatus, you'd be fine because you could try it, color all of them different colors. You could color the, like make the little chain holding them could be silver, and each one of these ornaments could be a different color. You do it. If there's any part that's not good, just color it again with the stamp or with the marker, flip it back down again, move on to the next one. Definitely, if you want to color 3 different colors in here, and I'm going to write that on my list. I remember the next time, multicolor. This is the way to go. So there we go. Step stamping. And yeah, see, just one little trial piece that didn't work. A little bit of adjustment. Boom. Bob's your uncle. Okay. I'm going to, I think actually I might still need this piece. So I'm going to take my stamp off of it and keep this. All right. How long have we been going? Oh, we've been going for a while now. I should have put a disclaimer at the beginning. Caution, Tracy's gonna ramble. The thing is, I guess it's not really rambling. I'm giving you all sorts of little bits and pieces, but this Stamparatus, there's just so much you can do with it. Okay, so those are all some pretty cool things. I will show you really quickly because the stepping that I showed you this way, right? If you imagine it, I guess either way, I kind of like things offset this way if I'm an offset. But this stamp set, Biggest Wish, is, oh, it's such a good looking stamp set. But it has these huge pieces on it. Well, one of the things you could do is you can write happy, 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 and then birthday. So for something like this, right? So that doesn't necessarily have to be pictures. If you really wanted to thank someone, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And these are bigger stamps, and these are also bigger stamps. So you could stamp it, like if it was a skinnier stamp, you could stamp it and do the same thing you did with the stepping. Then take your magnets off, shift, I don't know if this was a 1/2 inch stamp instead of a 1 inch stamp, shift your card base up by 1/2 inch, redo it again, and with a different color, with the same color, stamp in between. So if you had a skinnier pattern, you could do it twice and get more. Now this, when I was stamping, I was going across this way. This works just as well going this way, right? So if you put this at the top and you stamped and you moved it all the way down, and then like I said, adjusted your card and stamped and moved it all the way down, you could get 10 or something. So very cool technique. A little bit of trial and error, but very cool technique. And the beauty is once you figure it out once, it's good to go. And you'll notice that I'm using these old templates. And you can see there's like 3 different things stamped on this one because I figured it out once. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is a 3 3/4 square of cardstock. And it fits well. I'll try to do this without squishing my, did I mention how much I love white on green? Okay, so this piece of cardstock fits quite well. I needed it to be a square, not a rectangle, but it fits quite well on a standard card base. So 3 3/4 square. You can make them whatever you want. I mean, you can't get very much bigger or it's not going to fit on a standard card base. But because I know that that's a pretty good size, I've made this template, I don't know, 2 years ago, and I've used it a few times since because I don't have to redo it every time. I just keep this in the same little place I keep my Stamparatus. That is a blank piece of paper. So, okay, this one I went to town. So I got a lid here with no ink spot underneath it. So when I first started doing this, making a sample for today, that is, I wanted to use coffee cups. These are so cute, these coffee cups, and they're retro, right? Like they just scream retro to me. They scream 50s diner. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm going to do. Well, as it turns out, that didn't really work. So for 2 reasons, and I guess I'm talking and replacing my foam mat. You'll notice I'm putting my foam mat back underneath again because I know that the one I'm using is see-through photopolymer. So all of the stamps in this set are a fairly good size, but I thought I'm going to try it and see if it works. So this fills up a little bit more than I wanted, but it also is not a perfect circle. So that was like, but if you were going to put a different element on, like you could stamp an extra cup and put it here. And I was going to pop a sentiment in the middle and like pop it up so that the sentiment was covering like just to the edge of the saucers. And then I'd have all these things. But what you might notice here, I got to figure, oh, this is exactly how I started. And this would bug me. So this is why this didn't work for me. Maybe it works for you. So I started with this, and it's a little bit harder to see, but Bermuda Bay, which is a blue, Calypso Coral, Blackberry Bliss. And I was going to do the pattern, right? So I did the blue again, and then I got here. And by the time I got here, which is 5 stamps in, I had lost track of what I was doing and used the wrong color. So first off, you really have to pay attention when you're doing this or you'll screw up your pattern. So my plan was to go, and just because the names are shorter, blue, orange, purple, blue, orange, purple, blue, orange. So it wasn't going to work out for me. So maybe it doesn't matter. And if you were doing them all in one color, it really wouldn't matter. And if I was going to pop and I'm grabbing whatever I could reach from beside me, I think this might be the right size, but it's definitely not the right color. Oops, that is too big. Well, I'm going to use it anyways. So if I was going to put something like this over top of it, maybe something a little smaller, maybe I wouldn't care that a little bit of the plate or a little bit of the saucers were covered because I was going to cover it anyways. But maybe that is just one little bit too much. And that's, oh, here we go. This is better. This is what my intent was, right? So maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you're going to do it all one color. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're going to do a bunch of different colors and it doesn't matter if you have the even numbers. So there's nothing actually wrong with this. It just didn't work for what I was attempting to do. Now, I also tried it in one color. And when I first set it up, I had the stamp a little bit lower. So they're actually overlapping by more. Then I did this. Then I did this. So, and this is just like a big hodgepodge mess. I'm hoping, because I'm going to do this now, that this works out better. I'm like, okay, no, I think I got it now. But this took me 1, 2, 3, 4 tries because there's actually 2 attempts on this, to get what I wanted to make it look like. So playing with it, getting used to it. If you want to make something, don't say, oh, I need to have this ready in 5 minutes. So I'm going to start with this technique because there is a little bit of trial and error. Once you've done it once or twice, it definitely gets easier. Now, I have preset these up based on the second attempt on this piece of cardstock. So I know which way they go. And in this case, as I said before, I'm going to make the most of using 2 plates and flipping them. And I'm going to use the stamp set that the cup came from because then I got something underneath that one as well. And I'm going to use all these different colors of ink. I'm going to go to town. Okay, make sure that's on the right side. So I set up all these stamps and I'm in the interest of time because Lord knows I've been rambling long enough. I'm just going to show you how this sort of comes together. This template for my 3.5-inch square, and you could experiment with, what is this? This is an 8-point star. So I guess a 16-point star. You could make a 6-point star. You can make whatever template you want. And you could make a template where you actually cut squares out using your framelits or however you want to cut them, and actually make it so you have like a thinner piece of cardboard and your cardstock sits in it. But I found that just to draw it out on a piece of paper, and you got grid lines, so that made it easier, is all you need to do. So whichever one you come up with, and this is just a 2 squares offset. And I am putting these down because it's habit, quite honestly, because you don't actually need them for what I'm about to do, believe it or not. Oh, actually, yes, you do. No, you don't actually. If I do all of one color and then all of the next color and then all of the next color, you need to have this down, but I'm going to do all 3 and then move it. So I don't actually need them, but I'm going to leave it anyways. Okay, so this is my lighter green and I'm going to stamp on this leaf. Now you do have to remember that I'm going to offset it like this. Because I have stamps on both sides, every time I put the ink on this side, stamp on the other side is sticking. So you can offset it a little bit. Okay, so there's my first leaf. And then I'm going to flip it. Nope. Check that. I did this differently. Okay, so I'm going to do one color at a time. So I don't actually need the magnets. I'm just going to move them off. So I started here with this lined up on the square. Now I'm going to go like this. I'm going to stamp or ink up my thing again. I'm going to put this one down. And really, even if it moves a little bit on the end, it doesn't really matter. For what I'm attempting and to get a big, full leafy wreath, which is what I'm aiming for, it's not really going to matter. So basically what I'm doing, and see how it's sticking to the photopolymer? It does not matter. So I started square, then I went to the angle. Then I went back to the square. Now I'm going back to the angle. And each time I'm just turning my cardstock one turn. Now, the only reason I would suggest maybe not doing that, and I guess so the camera gods are smiling on me, is if it sticks there and you're not careful how you pull it off, you run the risk of smudging on your cardstock. But again, let's just do this. I wonder if this would work. But you can do that. It doesn't reach all the way in. Okay, so I am rotating each time. I want to show you the other technique because it's so handy. And as far as I know, the Stamparatus is really the way to do it. I don't know that there's a substitute for doing it. Like for some of this stuff, you could just line it up and eyeball it. This just makes it much easier. But for some techniques, Stamparatus, the way to go. Okay, so you'll notice that I now have my wreath. And that was soft succulent for those following along. So this is where I started. I started square. I went my whole way around. Now, quite honestly, that looks pretty cool just as it is. I never really got the full vision of what I was doing because I was looking through all the mistakes to try to see what it was going to look like. So when I did it the second time, I started on an angle. And I don't actually know that it matters if you started on an angle, but that is how I did it. So I'm flipping this over, and you'll see that the red dyes the photopolymer, which generally is not great, but in this case, it makes it so much easier to see. So it's very bold compared to my green. So I'm only doing every second one, and I chose to start on an angle, and you'll see why on the other one. And like I said, I keep knocking this a little bit. I could put a magnet every time, but I'm just doing it's all natural, so it's not going to matter. And so I'm skipping the square, and I'm just going for this, I guess, diamond, as it were. And I'm just doing every couple. Because if not, it's going to be a lot of red. And because it's stamping kind of over here, that's where I had it lined up. So if you lose track of where you're going, you can just bring this down enough to see and go, oh yeah, no, that's right. That's where I was going. So these are the berries on my wreath. I'll line that back up. And there we go. Now I have berries on my wreath. Then I have this guy. So what I did with him is I actually started with it squared up, and I'm going to do every second one. But the trick with this one, and I have a feeling it's going to be brutal to try to see this, is if I do the whole guy, I'm going to have these big, long, where'd my black mat go? Just a minute, my little piece of foam. So you may not need this as much for stamping if you buy the fancy mat, but it sure helps in a video. There you go. So you see on here how long this stem is. Well, I don't actually want the stem. I only want the leaves. Because if I do the stem the way I'm doing it, the stem's going to stick out this way, and it's going to get a little a little too beefy. I could have taken off some of the red stem as well, but I knew that the red stem lined up over the green stem, so it wouldn't be as obvious. But this one, because of the direction I'm going, I don't want that. So with my ink spot, and maybe you can see, I'm only inking up, and you can see it really easily. I don't know if I'll be able to see it on there. This is going to be flopping if I don't take it off. So you can see really easily when you put ink on the photopolymer where the ink is. So you'll notice I have the leaves, but I didn't ink up the stem. Okay. So, and that's just because it'll get too messy otherwise. So I'm going to start square, and I'm going to put my leaves down. And this is not like super precise. The leaves just kind of end, but I just wanted two-tone in green. Now, I did think, and we don't actually have the stamp, so I'm sorry for all of you who are like, oh my God, that's the one I want to make. If we had like little elephants, because you know how elephants walk and they go trunk to tail? Wouldn't it be cute to stamp a whole bunch of elephants going around trunk to tail? Oh, I mean, it'd be adorable. The coffee cups, ornaments, balls, circles, shapes. I was thinking like beach balls. You could have a whole big thing going. But you can make anything. In this case, I'm making like, it's sort of circular, but it's not really because it's kind of more square. But whatever bottom template you come up with that holds your cards. Now, you could make a circle template. And I haven't tried this yet, but it is one of the things I plan to try next. You could make a circle template. That's really small. So that when you put this down, it was the same thing. Now, the only thing I'm not 100% sure on is, are you just 100% eyeballing it? So if you did circle, 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 and you just like eyeballed it, or is there a way you could make a template, or you don't have the old spirographs where you used to make the circles like this? So maybe you make a template like that, and again, buy one, play, show me what you made. But look at this. Is this not a pretty Christmas tree? And it is more square than round, but I love it. I think it's gorgeous. And if I really wanted to, I could reset. Well, I don't have another leaf in the set, but I could reset, take one of these ones and reset it and kind of fill it in, and maybe I could make it more round. But I just love the way this turned out, which given that this is what I was using to see how it was going to turn out, I'm pretty impressed that it turned out as nice as it did. So there you go. And I don't even know if this has a name. I just call it pattern stamping because I'm using a pattern on the paper and I'm stamping. So I have no idea what it's called, but that's one of the fun things you can do with this. Now, there's two more, and I'm going to tell you about one of them while I set up for the other one. So one of the other things that you can do with this is use it for color heat embossing. Stampin' Up! Used to sell a whole bunch of different color embossing powders. And they have a life, like a shelf life, before they start to dry out and then they don't work as effectively. And I will be doing a separate video on heat embossing, so that's not why I'm not actually doing it today. But and heat embossing is one of those wow techniques that once you see it once, you'll be totally addicted. I just need one. I don't actually need the other one. So with the Stamparatus, you can now make colored heat embossing with just clear powder. So that you can buy black and the metallics and clear and white. So if you want to stamp that green wreath. Now I could have done this. Now that would have been an undertaking. But so what I could have done though, and I can't even imagine doing the wreath quite honestly, but I'll use the coffee cup. That's what I do with my coffee cup. There it is. So what I could do is I could pin this down, or magnet this down. I could stamp this in my Calypso Coral. Boom, stamp. I have this lovely Calypso Coral. Then I take my Versamark, which is the clear ink pad that you need for heat embossing. I wipe the Calypso Coral off of my stamp. I ink it up with Versamark. I stamp down directly over top, so I'm getting coverage on the exact same spot that I just stamped the Calypso Coral. I take it off my little Stamparatus. I sprinkle my powder on it, knock it off, heat emboss. Somebody came to my door. Heat emboss, and now I have colored stamping because the color will show through the clear. Right? So any one of these techniques where you're stamping is basically the same thing, only you're going to stamp in ink. you're going to wash off your stamp. You're going to stamp in Versamark, stamp it, put the powder on, and heat emboss. So this has made doing that so much easier, because otherwise you'd be doing the same thing as with the background. You'd be sticking it down in one color, taking your Versamark and trying to line it up over top. Way easier with the Stamparatus. Okay, last technique, and it's a wow, and I can't reach it. What did I do with it? Just buried it all. Oh, because I put it off to the side. There we go. Okay, I buried it with my piece of green. Okay, so you know how sometimes you'll see a stamp set. I don't know why I have to have a story, but I got a story. You'll see a stamp set such as this, and you'll be like, wow, beautiful bird. Wouldn't it be great if there was one facing the other direction? Because then I could have like the little birds were talking to each other, and you could send it to your best friend and say, sure miss talking to you. Or you could send it to your significant other and have them be little lovebirds and little heart. And there's a dog stamp set. You could put like the little bowl of spaghetti in between the two of them. Lady and Tramp, your card. So you want to do something like this, but you want to be able to face it. Or it could just be the way your design works, the bird needs to be facing the other direction. It doesn't even need to be a pair necessarily. So this is reverse image stamping. And using the Stamparatus, it's possible. Now, isn't that awesome? I used one stamp. And what I did, and I'm going to show you it with a different technique, but I'm going to show you this way. And on this one, I did this way. So this is what I did. I stamped this image, and then I stamped again, and I put my cardstock back down over top of it. And you'll notice I stamped, and I used the stamp to get pressure, and I sort of basically lifted the ink back up onto the card. So now I have two birds facing the same direction. I could have just done it where the bird was like stamped it this way. Sorry, I'll just do it. So the bird is just facing a different direction. But I did this. Now, the reason I'm showing you both of these samples is because there's two ways to do this. And the one way that I originally was taught to do this was using a silicone mat. And that's the one I'm going to show you. But so this is the silicone mat, right? So when you stamp on it, it's a little harder to see. It does have the benefit, though, of being grippy. I don't know if that's a word, but grippy. But I did think it's a little harder to see on that one. So what I have, my lovely friend Tamara, this is one of the, why do I keep forgetting what this stupid piece of paper is called? Grid sheets. And she plasticized it. So now when you put it in here, you can, so when you're lining up, right, you can stamp down, yep, that's perfect. You take your little thing, you wipe it off, and you go, and you don't go through as much paper. So I thought, well, this is a slippery surface. Let me see if I can do this reverse image stamping using something like this. And I'm going to save you the trouble of wasting your paper. So this is what happened. Oh, where'd my fancy black stamp mat go? Seriously, I just keep throwing things off out of my way, and everything's blending into everything else. And I have no idea what I do with that mat already. Okay, I'm going to use this one. So you have a little bit something to see it on. Okay, so this was the original one. And this is the one that I picked up off of there. And you'll notice it's a little grainy. Now this is a line drawing to begin with, so it's not crisp, smooth edges, but it is edges. And generally you will get a much better pickup. But this one, it's more like, the pencil art where you bounce your pencil and make little dots. It's more like that. Okay, it's not as clear as it could have been. And I think it's because the plasticized sheet is a little slippery. So I don't think that's really what you're going for. Now, it's not bad. And if I was just doing, just wanted them facing a different direction, this wouldn't be too bad at all, especially because chances are I'd color it in with my blends anyways. And this would work quite nicely. But if you have two of them on a card, it's very noticeable that this one is not stamped as solid as this. So that was using my plasticized sheet. So I recommend not using this. I mean, you could try it, you might have better luck, but I'm going to recommend not doing that. So when I did the exact same stamp, the exact same setup, the exact same everything, but I did it on my silicone mat, look how much one is always going to be darker than the other. Like the original is always going to be better, but look how close those are, right? So this little silicone mat is how I achieved this. And this is awesome. And I'm not sure who's getting a lovebird card or it will more than likely be a friend I miss seeing you card or something, because the two little birds, if I could put little coffee cups down maybe, or who knows. But anyways, so this is a cute idea to do this. One of the other ways you can reverse, and I love this stamp set, and I think I love peace and just the idea of a peaceful place. But so this is the stamps that we're going to use. So if this cabin happened to be perfectly located on the side of a lake somewhere, and the sun was, let's say, setting, oops, I knocked everything on the floor. Wouldn't it be nice to get a reflection in the water? So in this case, this worked perfectly because I don't actually want this to be as dark as the original. And I did make these a little bit farther apart because in my mind, in this finished card, there's going to be some trees here, and they're going to be like cut and popped up because I like dimension. And there's going to be trees here, and I'm more than likely going to stamp or put down some kind of snowbank in between them. And then I haven't quite figured out the water yet, but there'll be something. So this is what I want, though, is I want the reflection of the cabin in the water, right? So I flipped it. So I can flip them side to side or top to bottom. So I'm going to show you, because you're looking at this like, oh my goodness. But yes, it is that easy. So here's the thing. And again, I didn't actually line it up on a piece of paper. I just did it. Okay, so I'm going to put my silicone mat down. And I noticed every other piece that I did in here, I used white cardstock. So just because I did not use this, I'm going to use the very vanilla. So what I'm doing now, because I can't mark on my silicone mat, I'm just trying to make it. Okay, so I can tell there's a Stampin' Up! Logo here. There's a Stampin' Up! Logo here, and there's these lines. So I'm putting this down in the middle, and I'm lining my card up with the dark line and the edge of the Stampin' Up! Symbol, because I am trying to scooch over. Oops, I'm going to go one below as much as I can, but I want to be able to see where I lined it up. So I know in my mind that I'm lined up on that. Okay. Now, you don't have to take that off, but because I'm knocking everything over, I might as well. Okay, so this is where I want my first one to go. And even if you just want to reverse them, you still have to have it kind of lined up to figure out where the first one's going to go, because you're going to stamp it onto the silicone. So in this case, I think I need to be a little bit lower down. I'm actually going to put these closer together just to see if I like that better for my card. I wanted space in between, but I think that one might be a little bit too much of a gap. Okay, so I'm imagining the same idea on the card. So this is where I want this to go. So I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to show you something else. This is not a huge stamp, but it is bigger. So I have an ink spot that's soft suede. And if I go like this onto my stamp, you'll notice, if I can make it focus, you'll notice there's kind of lines in it. So that's because the ink pad on here is only this big. So as I'm trying to stamp around and get all the coverage, I'm making lines. Now I could probably go and like keep going over and over it until I buff out all of those lines. But in this case, this is one of those times where you probably just want to grab your bigger stamp pad because it will save you a lot of grief. Now, because this is a bigger stamp, I'm not going off the edge as much. When you have a little stamp in the middle of this, that's what makes it wobble and hit the plate. But because this stamp is actually a pretty good size stamp, I didn't hit the plate once, right? And I got pretty good coverage on my cabin. So I'm going to go down. Oh, I did it again. I forgot to take the foam thing out when I switched to the clear. That actually worked. I'm surprised that it did. Okay, we're going to do this properly though, because I was really pushing, which you really shouldn't push because you're liable to break your plate. Okay, most of what I was doing was photopolymer. See, I make these mistakes so you don't have to. Okay, so I'm going to put that back. And you'll notice this is lined up perfectly again. So I'm still good because this is where I was lined up. Okay, so, and it actually did work because I didn't push hard enough close to that thing, the hinge. So I've got my cabin, right? This is where I had it all lined up. So I'm going to leave my little dudes there. Now what I want is I need this piece of the cabin, right? I need the reflection. So I'm going to ink up my ink pad, ink up my stamp, and I'm going to stamp directly onto the silicone mat. Now you want even like this. Don't be mushing around. Just as much as you can, even things, because you do not want to jiggle anything. Now it is not maybe super easy to see, but you can see I got pretty good coverage there on my silicone mat. Now, when I was using the little plasticized sheet, I did not get as good a coverage. I had to stamp it twice, and then even then, it wasn't as good, but I could see it way clearer on there. That's how I knew. Now, here's the trickiest part to doing this. I want this to be my reflection. So I have to line this up in the exact same spot so I know where it's going to go. But you do not want to move your cardstock around. So I'm putting my fingers, I'm off the screen, I apologize. I'm putting my fingers down and I'm lining my card up on my line, and I've got my card bent up so it's not anywhere near the ink. Now you do need to be somewhat quick with this, but make sure you do it right. So I'm doing this, and then I'm going to lay it down all at once, and I'm going to very carefully close this. Now, I'm using this because this will give me pressure exactly where the ink is, because it's the exact shape of what is underneath. So I did put my hand on there, but I didn't mean to. As soon as I did it, I'm like, no, before I close the cover. But you want to save it for this. And then again, same thing. You just want to rub that. Now, I didn't ink this up, so I got this very grainy look, but that doesn't matter because it's the other side that counts. So again, I'm going to hold the side that's dry, and I'm going to very carefully lift from the top and straight up because I don't want to smudge anything. Okay. So you know how Tracy likes to wing it? I thought that maybe I had too much of a gap between this cabin and the reflection. Okay, perhaps not quite enough. But funny enough, I didn't overlap anything, so that is like totally fluky. But nonetheless, I guess if the cabin was right on the lake, you would end up with this. So maybe I should have adjusted a bit more when I put it down. But quite honestly, this just amuses me. But there you go. So you see, I stamped the original, then I stamped again onto the silicone, then I flipped my card over, and I used the stamp to give me the right pressure, and I have a reflection. Is this not one of the coolest things you can do? I think so. So there we go. 10 different uses, not to mention bifocals or progressives or arthritis or all those other things that just make stamping a bit of a challenge sometimes, that this will help you with. We have reverse image. We have the heat emboss that I didn't show you, but we have the reverse image that can give you something like this. Yep, that's right. I just threw a whole bunch of paper on the floor. We can get a cool little wreath or pattern stamping, as it were. What else did I do? I moved everything farther over. We can just line things up straight. We can do step stamping. You can get the dark ink. You can do multiples of the tags, which I put too far away for me to reach right now. It is a fun tool that, okay, so we have been an hour and 34 minutes. So, and that was just me showing you. That wasn't even the figuring it out and playing and having all the fun. Seriously, you will not regret having one of these, because there's just so much you can do. And the more time you have to play, the more you can explore. I would love to see people try to use the pattern. Sorry, I moved it. No, I can't find it. The pattern, and try some different things and tell me how you figured it out so that I can use your template afterwards. This is awesome. Like the options you can have and the fun you can have. Oh, it's just so good. And let's not forget, I'm gonna leave this here because this is my fave. Background stamps, so much easier. And white craft paint on evening evergreen cardstock is gorgeous. So thank you, diehards, for holding on for that very long video and learning all about the Stamparatus, or now you understand why I say Stampasaurus, because man, this tool is a big one. If you get a Stamparatus, let me know if you want to order any of the Stamparatus or any of the accessories. If you get one and you want to play, let me know, because I can send you one of these. I can draw one out for you and very quickly send it to you, so you have an idea of a starting point for this particular little guy. And then, like I said, play and let me know how it works out for you, because the possibilities are endless. All right. Thank you, everyone. That was our very first Technique Tuesday. I haven't decided what next week's Technique Tuesday will be yet, so stay tuned. Thanks, everybody, for joining me.